let's get ready to podcast. Woo! Oh, damn it. Hold on. There we go. We got it.
Oh, this is going to be another thing, isn't it?
Yep. Thank you for tuning in. This is Let's Unpack That, the podcast where we two college grads talk about Twilight because, let me tell you, it is a shit show and there is so much to unpack. I feel like we've learned so much about one another during these podcast sessions, don't you?
Yeah, especially the last two, because those have been real heavy.
Lots of Jesus and sex and more Jesus, just as it should be. Anyway, so we're basically taking Twilight and analyzing it from a socio-political perspective, and we're currently on chapters, I believe it's 17 and 18, so we're making it pretty far into the book.
We're also on episode 10.
Is this episode 10?
This is episode 10.
Oh,
we made it to 10.
Yeah. Sweet. That is so exciting. Thanks, guys.
So congratulations to us.
Maybe we should have done something.
You know, I think your celebration at the beginning was enough.
Okay. I was gonna say I've got the horn. I was literally about to turn it back on and be like, wait a minute, it's our 10th episode.
I know you were. Anyway, I'm Lydia.
Oh, I'm Nina.
Shall we get started?
Yes.
I can't wait to get to chapter 18 because you had a thing that you were going to tell me, and you stupidly texted me that you had something interesting, and now I've been wondering all afternoon and evening.
Well, now that's putting a lot of pressure on me, because if you don't find it interesting, I'm going to feel like such a fucking loser, so...
You know what? If I don't find it interesting, I will pretend to find it interesting for your sake.
Thank you. You know, I really need that kind of guidance and reassurance and validity in my life.
We all do.
Yay! All right, so we are starting with chapter 17. The game. America's pastime. Baseball. The Cullens are coming down to play during some balmy weather there. They needed a little bit of a thunder. And the thunder. Something I can't remember the words. Nah, that's okay. In any case, it's thundering outside. They are playing some baseball. But before we get there, we have an unexpected visitor or two at the Swan residence.
Yes.
It looks like Billy Black is back again with his bullshit. Let's go.
Yeah, so Jacob and Billy come visit. First of all, I thought it was really funny how Billy is like, go look for this picture in the trunk of the car, Jacob. And Jacob comes back soaked and like, it's not there. Like, oh man, he was just trying to get rid of you.
I mean, don't we all keep pictures of our loved ones in the trunks of our cars next to their dead bodies? That's exactly what we do. It makes perfect sense. I don't think he's trying to get rid of him.
Okay, I have a legal question for you, Nina, since you know the most about this. Can podcast recordings be used as evidence in a court of law?
Oh, that's a great question. Can I Google that?
Yeah, go ahead. I've got time.
Let me see. Can podcast...
Meanwhile, I'll talk about
used as evidence.
The warning from Billy Black. So he warns Bella again that she shouldn't be hanging out with Edward because he saw her with him again. And she pulls out the sass and says it's none of his business. That was, I'll say, the most assertive that Bella has ever been in this entire book. Because before she was just going with the flow of things. But now she's standing up for herself. And true, she is standing up for herself on behalf of the boy. But... You know, small steps. Mm-hmm. All right, so what are your thoughts on Billy Black coming back again?
The one thing that really stuck out to me, I think, was Bella saying, well, you know, it's my business of what I'm doing, which is true, definitely. But the big thing that stood out to me was she said, well, I think it would be my business to decide whether or not this is Charlie's business to know that I'm dating Edward Cullen. That's where I was like, hold on a minute. Let's back up. Let's talk about that. You're 17 years old. And you are living in your parents' house and your father's house. And you're dating someone that you would potentially be bringing into his residence as well. And here's the thing. I definitely would not have thought this when I was a teenager. So I'm not faulting Bella for not realizing this. But, like, you're living in your father's house. I think he has a right to know who Bella is dating, because potentially that person is going to be let into his home. And as someone who is somewhat private, a pretty private person and pretty particular about who I allow into my living space, that would be something that I would expect from my children, is to say, hey, before you bring them over for the first time, we need to talk about this. And like, we need to know who they are, just for the sake of, not only for the sake of their safety, but for the respect of, the homeowner. And I know that sounds kind of like, you're under my roof, but honestly, it's kind of true. Even if he is somewhat absentee and clueless, it just wouldn't be fair not to let him know, hey, I'm dating a kid, whether or not it's a blood-sucking vampire or just a regular football player or whatever, or a Mike Newton.
See, I don't completely agree with you.
Okay.
And I think we're getting back to what you said a couple episodes ago about having a secret boyfriend and like keeping your relationship secret when you're a teenager. And I think like she has a right to do that. She has a right to keep him secret, but if he crosses the threshold, then it is Charlie's business because it's his house. But like if she were more honest and open with her father, they would be closer. So if she had told him, hey, I'm dating Edward Cullen, 10 minutes before he comes over for the first time, they would have a better relationship with each other and just a better environment. So I don't necessarily think it's bad that she wants to withhold information from Charlie. I just think that she could have done it a lot sooner and trusted Charlie with that. But like, what teenager trusts their parents?
And exactly, that's kind of the point I'm getting at. If he's going to cross the threshold, I can speak, then definitely that's something that she should have definitely told him about.
Yeah, and she did. Just 5 minutes before he walked in.
Yeah, but the way that she says it, she implies like, well, it's my business whether or not Charlie knows if I'm dating Edward Cullen, no matter where the hell he is. And it's kind of like, I know you're being, like, let's be honest, Bella's being a badass in this scene. Like, she has the responses ready, and she's like, actually, Billy, this is none of your business. Thank you for coming. Have a nice night. It's great. It's beautiful. I actually really enjoyed this moment, especially reading it and seeing how much she was making him uncomfortable. But the way she made it sound was like, well, I don't have to tell Charlie anything. That was the read that I was getting on it, when, the actual truth is, no, actually, you do kind of need to tell Charlie some things. Thank you.
Or at least you should.
Yeah, you should. You really, really should. I love that she hinted at the treaty that both protected the tribe and bound the tribe. I think he came in there thinking that Bella was just really dumb and falling for the cute, handsome guy. But from what Bella's able to kind of tell him here, she's like, actually, I kind of do know what's going on. And let's think about this for a second. I'm crazy and I'm going to date him anyway. So that's probably why they got the hell out of there so fast. But it was still really funny when she goes on page 352 and Billy says, you probably don't know this, but the Cullen family has an unpleasant reputation on the reservation. And Bella replies back, actually, I did know that, but that reputation couldn't be deserved, could it? Because the Cullens never set foot on the reservation, do they? Essentially reminding him of the agreement, was kind of like, hey, just so you know, I actually know a little bit of what's going on. So that was a moment for Bella. I really enjoyed her in these couple pages. I also like how Billy goes, just think about what you're doing, Bella, he urged. Okay, I agreed quickly. He frowned. What I meant to say was, don't do what you're doing. Bella has some balls. Apparently, friends are irrelevant, according to Bella, because whenever Jess calls her, she's like, oh, the dance seems irrelevant. Everything seems irrelevant. I don't even know what girls are. She even says, like, Jessica, Mike, the dance, and the school, they all seem strangely irrelevant at that moment. So we're at the point where she's pretty much just abandoning everything else for the sake of this relationship, which is always scary and fun to watch. Do you have anything to add?
Just that, like, I think it says something that Jessica called Bella to tell her that Mike kissed her, and Bella is so dismissive. Like, Jessica wants to be her friend. Just give her a chance.
Yeah, and, like, that's wonderful, Jess. Like, come on. Squeal with your friend a little bit.
You are so fake.
Yeah. Like, just get excited about it. Like, you were so thrilled when you and Edward first kissed. Like, why can't Jessica have that same kind of thrill and have that kind of enthusiasm and get it back from your friend?
Because she's not dating an immortal vampire, and therefore her relationship is less valid and is boring and won't last forever like hers.
Guess so.
Blech. Also, she says on page 354, now that I was removed from Jasper's and Edward's influence, I began to make up for not being terrified before, which is confirmation that she knows her emotions were being manipulated by Jasper, and she's not at all bothered by that.
Why would she be?
She's okay with that. Like, I'm okay if somebody messes with my head, makes me feel a little happier.
God,
I'm okay if they make me feel a little scared, a little less scared. It's like, oh no, we're already letting bad things slide.
Lord, I saw that too. I also want to talk a little bit about, right at the beginning of the chapter, he calls Jacob a kid, and Bella goes, he's not a kid, he's only a couple years younger than me, and, he's not a child, and Edward goes, oh, and like, I know that. Edward, you're talking like a pedophile here. Let's take a deep breath.
And it isn't the first time he's done this either. Earlier in the book, he referred to the classroom full of high schoolers as children, and by extension, Bella is a child along with them. And also later in this chapter, Charlie thinks Edward is older, and too mature, even though he realizes that Edward is the youngest. Like, Charlie's freaked out by that.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. Dads freak out about a lot of stuff. But I think this is a legit thing to be worried about, especially because this is not the first time this has come up. It's not the first time in this chapter that Edward has given people, like, i.e. us and Charlie, the pedo creeps. But, like, let's break this down. So Edward was 17 when he died. The oldest a person can be in high school is, let's say, around 19. Is 19 too old for 17? Yes. Is there a big difference between 19 and 17? Absolutely. So why does Charlie think the big Cullen boy is 18 or 19, and he still thinks Edward is too mature for her?
Are you saying in terms of how Charlie thinks 17 to 19 is too big of a drop, or do you think that 17 to 19 is too big of a jump? Because I would argue that if they're still in the high school setting together, then their maturity levels are going to be around the same. I think it were different if it were going to be like, hey, 13 to 15, and the 13-year-old is still in middle school. But I don't know if I think the 19 and 17 difference is a huge deal if they're both still in high school and kind of in that same environment. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I'm very much relating to Charlie in this situation, in that I think the difference between 19 and 17 isn't just 2 years, it's 2 school years.
Yeah.
Like, you have Bella, who's a junior, and a 19-year-old who would presumably be a fifth-year senior. And those 2 school years, to me, are what makes the difference more than 19 minus 17 equals 2. And more than there's an 18 between there, and 18 is legal. Which also, there's an 18 between there. But it gave me the impression that the Cullens are not passing as well as they think they are. And maybe nobody questions them because Dr. Cullen is such a good doctor, but they definitely come off as older than high school age.
I think it's interesting that Charlie says he doesn't like the look of the big one. Like, he literally says, I don't like the look of that big one. I'm sure he's a nice boy and all, but he looks too ... mature for you. What do you mean there, Charlie?
Just that he's big and brawny and he looks dangerous. If he's brooding, he looks like he could hurt his girl. Like, yeah. I understand that. I don't have a kid, but...
Okay, and then they sat down for like 2 seconds, though. Like, they sat down quickly and then got back up after they said literally one sentence. They go, so I hear that you're getting my girl to watch baseball. Yes, sir, that's the plan. And then they're up again. Okay, goodbye.
Also, when Edward arrives, he looks like a model in an advertisement for raincoats.
So thrilling.
But yeah, I want to talk more about parenting with the next chapter, because we get more about Esme and Carlisle and like what Bella is looking for in a parent, because she's looking for a parent role model. But for now, like, let me just say, I relate to Charlie. Like, watching my own dad go through this experience of watching me have my first boyfriend, and like knowing how protective my own dad is of me and of my sister, and how protective I am of my little sister, is like, I relate to Charlie. I get where he's coming from. I get why he would want to get the shotgun. I don't think he's right to get the shotgun, because that's outdated, but I get the concern.
I love it. Yeah. I like when she starts to clean the dishes and he says, I can do the dishes, you baby me too much.
True that.
Yes, that's true. Probably the most true sentence in this entire book. Also, Bella sighs a lot. Oh no, Edward sighs a lot. That's the one I was looking for.
Isn't the most common sentence in Twilight something like, he sighed? I saw a meme of that.
Is that referring just to Edward, or...?
Okay, so I think this is where it came from. The Telegraph has an article called The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, and Twilight, Most Popular Sentences Revealed, which is like, oh, sensational. But okay, here it is. The most common sentences in the Twilight series was, I sighed. In the Hunger Games series, it was, my name is Katniss Everdeen. And then the most common sentence in the Harry Potter series was, nothing happened.
Nothing happened! I love it! Oh my gosh, it's like describing Dumbledore's sex life. Nothing happened.
I'll link that article in the
episode
notes.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, so speaking of repetitive descriptions, do you want to hear some more?
Yes.
So I noticed a couple of things in this chapter, and they just irked me, like particularly in this chapter. I have the ebook. Got it from your library, and so I did a Control F search. Yeah.
What?
Wait, I think it just expired.
Oh, damn.
I had a combination Twilight and the gender swap version, which I also used for this episode. But I did a Control F and made sure to rule out, so it's just in Twilight, the normal version. In this chapter, Edward practically always has his lips or nose somewhere on Bella's neck.
Yum.
Page 360 is the second time in this chapter alone that he does that. The word smell is used 47 times in the book, and around 30 of those refer to Bella and Edward smelling each other. Throughout the book, Bella swoons over Edward's soothing breath 3 times. 3 separate times.
Okay.
She calls him godlike 5 times.
Okay.
She calls him Adonis twice in addition.
Okay.
She calls him a statue or statuesque 5 times. Describes him as marble 8 times. And Edward growls in a romantic context 6 times, which includes dialogue tags.
I mean, that sounds like my sex life, yeah.
Thank you for your valuable contributions to the podcast.
You're welcome.
You're fired.
Okay. Good night. I'm kidding. I don't have a sex life.
Wow. And that's the real joke, folks.
Wow. Wow. I never been so insulted in my life.
No, you have before. I feel like you say you've never been so insulted in your life at least once a week.
I do. But it's okay because every time I get insulted, it's like never being insulted before. So it works. Never been so insulted in my life. I just get more and more offended every time someone insults me. That's how that works. See?
Makes sense.
That is something that I've said multiple times. Yesterday, my coworker sighed, and I went, could you, keep it down over there, Scott? And he goes, Nina, could you just shut up? And it was the funniest thing. I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm sorry. But it was great. It was a good moment in my time. Anyway, speaking of having to shut up, I didn't like how he kept on kissing her and was like, you don't have anything to be afraid of, doll. But here's the thing. She had a very valid thing that I relate to very, very much. She says, I'm worried about running into a tree. So that's one thing. I don't really worry about that as much. But the one thing she really was getting on about, she was like, hey, motion sickness. And he was like, what do you have to worry about? I'm here. I'm not going to run into a tree. And she's like, okay, but motion sickness? And he's like, no, it's okay. See, I run all the time. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to let a tree hurt you. And she's like, but motion sickness? And then he just is like, no, it's fine. And then she just goes for it. I'm concerned about the motion sickness. As someone who gets motion sick looking at a roller coaster, this is a very valid concern. Thank you. This has been my TED Talk.
See, a good boyfriend would have Dramamine.
Not Dramamine. That shit puts you to sleep. You have a prescription for Zofran. That shit works wonders.
Okay. I don't know a lot about motion sickness, because I don't really get motion sick.
My life is hard. But no, Zofran's the good shit.
Also, Edward says he loves Bella for the first time ever.
Aww.
Which I didn't realize that he hadn't said.
I know, right? And, like, he says it so nonchalantly. It's not like this big, like, I love you. It's more like, I love you. Like, they already know. Which is cute in its own way, but at the same time, it's like, wait a minute, hold on, what? Like, what have we missed?
Plot-wise, it's unsatisfactory. This also isn't a pretty moment.
No, it's not.
Which you would expect from a tragic, capital R, romantic hero.
Yeah.
Anti-hero?
Anti-hero? Perhaps. But after the big I love you comes the real reason why we're part of this book and why we're getting so far. It is the baseball scene. And that is honestly one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it is ridiculous. And I was able to find the most amazing article regarding this vampire baseball game in the Twilight movie. So let's just talk about it. You remember what the scene looked like in the Twilight movie, don't you? Yeah,
it's got the Muse song, Supermassive Black Hole, which we were
it
all
does.
thinking about when that picture of the black hole came out.
Yes. Going back here, I'm actually on a freeze frame right now. It's a high def clip from the movie, and you can just totally see how much eyebrow powder that they put into Edward Cullen's eyebrows in this scene. Hold on,
drop the link. I want to see this.
So go through this here with me. And if anyone wants to read along, this is an article by Vulture, and the title of the article itself is "The Vampire Baseball Game in Twilight is the funniest film scene ever." It is by Mr. Brian Boone, and it was published just recently here on November 21st, 2018, and again, that's on the Vulture. The entire article is essentially just a bunch of screen grabs of all of the Cullen people in their most awkward moments. And it's just, they're all analyzing it there. And so essentially how Mr. Boone introduces it is Twilight is an okay movie about a not particularly interesting romance between a boring vampire and a boring young woman that at one point grinds to a halt for 3 minutes so that we all may be treated to the ridiculously hilarious experience of watching a family of vampires play baseball. Why do they do that? And then, well, as Edward, the sexy vampire guy, explains to his human girlfriend and the audience's surrogate, Bella Swan, baseball is the American pastime, and there's a thunderstorm coming. That doesn't make any sense at all. So anyway, breaking down why this scene is so hilarious. The first one is that Esme is always smiling, and she kind of flirts with Emmett a little bit. She goes,
"What?"
She goes, "Bella's there," because Esme, the matriarch or the mom of the Cullen vampire family, asks her to be the Empire because, according to one of the vampires, she thinks we cheat. "I know you cheat," Esme teases back to her more or less son with a little more than flirtation. Which is cute. They're all wearing some old-time baseball caps that bear a C on them. So that's really cute. So they're all looking really dorky. And then we have, as Mr. Boone calls him, the dude bro vampire, which would be Mr. Emmett Hare.
That's the bulky one that Charlie doesn't like.
The bulky one that Charlie doesn't like, dude bro, Cullen.
With his hat on backwards.
With his hat on backwards. Of course he's got his hat on backwards. And he goes some hip-hop dance moves that he seemingly learned from Darian's dance grooves, which suggests that the big game of vampire baseball is going to be aggressively athletic. I'm going to call him Dude Bro Vampire for the rest of my life now. And then also, I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is when Bella calls Rosalie out when she's running around the bases, and then Emmett goes, woo, like, is cheering, and then she glares at him and he goes, babe, come on, it's just a game. And it's just like, it is I don't know why that line every time makes me laugh out loud. Like, the way he says it, he just seems like he even deepens his voice to be like a dude bro, and it's great. And then we have darling Alice. And what's great here is that Mr. Boone says she throws a pitch, and the film shows it to slowed down to imply that she threw it very fast. And because these here Twilight vampires do things very fast and with much vigor. And family, because family is so important. But I think my favorite screen cap, aside then again from Esme smiling all the time, you can see her, she's literally smiling in every scene, every screen grab of her, she's just like grinning. Going down, there's a picture of Carlisle with his baseball bat, and the caption under the photo goes, the vampire dad loves vampire baseball. But then Esme is having so much fun, she literally never stops smiling. She's just in the back like cheesing.
I have a question about Carlisle in this scene.
Yeah.
Is he wearing a baseball shirt over his collared button down?
Wait a minute, hang on. Let me find a better photo of him.
I'm looking at the picture roughly in the middle where Esme is also smiling and catching the ball. Like, you can see his sleeves.
Oh, Carlisle. You're iconic. It's just like Veronica Lodge going on a search party wearing a pea coat and heels. While we're looking that up, probably my favorite caption that Mr. Boone here says is, the bat-twirling vampire goes up to bat. That is, in fact, Jasper. He makes this face when he hits the ball. He can't even believe that he's playing vampire baseball and doing a really good job of it. And I've always loved the slow-down photo of Jasper because his face after he hits that ball is ridiculous. It almost looks like it's computer animated in some way because it's just like this, it's this ridiculous face. If you're not looking at it with us, he just has like, his mouth is open, his eyes are wide, and he's just looking like, I don't know, he's looking like he's been completely animated.
It looks like he's really hating those contacts.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my eyes are uncomfortable.
Probably that too.
But also there's Esme smiling in the background.
There she goes! I'm so proud of her. Esme comes up here, and she just casually comes up to Bella and says, yeah, so I totally tried to commit suicide. And, Bella goes, Edward said you jumped. And she's like, no, I tried to kill myself. It's fine. And Bella's like, oh, this is really awkward. And cut. We cut to the next scene.
That's interesting, because I absolutely didn't see it like that.
How did you see it?
I saw it as Esme being the archetypal mom and, like, spending time with a person who has no one else to spend time with. Mm-hmm. And, like, she is rather nonchalant about the fact that she lost her baby and that she jumped off a cliff. But I think it's been long enough for that to be understandable for her character. And I think, like, last episode we were talking about how we don't hear Carlisle's story from his own mouth, mm-hmm. And how we didn't think that we heard Esme's story. We don't get a lot of details here, but we do get her story told by her own self. Yes. And I think that's notable and important. Like, the way that she talks and the way that she carries herself around her family, like, we were talking last time about how, like, she loves her family. Yes. She really likes being a mom. And actually, Bella says, you sound like my mom, which I think she means in a good way here, mm-hmm. not in the way of her mom being flighty and stuff. I think she means, like, you are what I wish my mom could be all the time. Yeah. And with that, I saw more in that than just, oh, casually I jumped off a cliff. I also delved into the gender swap version for this one too, because we did Carlisle, so I figured I'll also do Esme. Unlike Carlisle's story, in the gender swapped version, the male Esme, whose name is Ernest, which I think is very fitting, tells his own story, and it's almost the same as Esme's. He jumped off a cliff after losing his 2-year-old daughter, Grace, and I don't know, that brought a new dimension to the character of Ernest as the archetype of a father, and maybe also bled over into Esme as the archetype of a mom. in this version, I think Esme is designed to bring forward the mom, and in the other version, I think Ernest brings forward the dad. But in both, Bella/Bo is longing for a good parent. She wants a good, responsible mom who will care for her and who will spend time with her and who will choose her when she could choose a man. And she finds that in Esme, because Esme chooses to spend time with her. Same way in the swapped version, Bo wants a responsible and sensitive dad, and he finds that in Ernest, who's honest with him about jumping off a cliff because he lost his child. And so I think Bella's longing to be cared for manifests itself a lot in her relationship with the Cullen family, especially Esme here, but also kind of Edward, because he can take care of her. And we've talked about this before, how he is supernaturally capable of taking care of her.
And, like, the one person that she doesn't have to take care of.
Right, yeah. But really, like, who wouldn't want to be a part of the Cullen family with parents like Carlisle, and especially with a mom like Esme?
Yeah.
She just cares so much.
I mean, dude, you can't see me right now, but my jaw's pretty much on the floor because... No, that I'm so in awe of that analysis because it's so true. She's looking for the family that she never had in the Cullens, which, I mean, I think we all tend to look for things that we didn't have in the people that we meet versus what we have in our family. I think that's something that's natural, but man, it's totally true that she is definitely looking for that good parent. And wow, I'm like in awe of the fact that you've got that all down. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Can we talk about the rogue tracker people now?
Yeah, let's move on to chapter 18, where we meet the antagonists.
Yeah, so here in the antagonists, it's a trio of vampires that are on the hunt. Again, most of the vampire world is nomadic, and these three are no exception. And essentially, they hear the Cullens playing the baseball game, they want to come join, but then essentially once they show up, they realize that Bella is in fact human. And in this chapter, the younger man, boy, person thing, who we know as James, locks onto her as a target because he is a tracker. So, that ensues the need to get Bella out of that situation, to get her to safety. And then that also introduces Edward cussing a lot. Of course, not going to be in tight. The thing here that I didn't really understand when I was reading through it the first few times was that Edward was going like, oh, James is a tracker. He's a tracker. And I was kind of like, okay, well, what is a tracker? Like, why is that so significant? Sure, okay, he likes to hunt people. Well, yeah, duh, he's a vampire. But it's actually a certain special ability, kind of how we were talking about earlier. It's generally called a tracking sense. So the vampires that have the tracking sense can locate and position the movements of a target, generally a living being, from a great distance. So it's something that they're supernaturally able to do. When it comes to James, we're looking at him here, he essentially could instinctively predict his prey's most likely moves and use it as a means of tracking, and then follow the target until he catches up. So that's what he gets his thrill from. It's fulfilling a need for him within that psychological and the supernatural abilities that he has.
Did you find anything about James's past? Like how he became a vampire? Is there anything on the Twilight Wiki about that?
Let me see. So one note that I see here is that as a human, James's father taught him to track and to trap his prey. So he was, it says here, becoming the best tracker on the frontier.
Oh, the frontier. Okay.
Yeah. It looks like he was born towards the end of the French Revolution. So his father was a French trapper. Looks like the Iroquois. It says here that they killed his parents before his 11th birthday. And because of that, he had to use his substantial skills to survive on his own. So he gained a measure of fame during his late teens and early 20s as being the best tracker on the frontier, but sometimes also being called the ugliest. So that is when he meets a Frenchman who is also a vampire. And strangely enough, he was bitten by a French vampire, but it doesn't look like it was Laurent.
I mean, there would have been a lot of French in that area. It was, after all, the French and Indian War.
And he died when he was 25.
Interesting.
All right, so essentially, James is our big bad tracker, and once he catches on to Bella's scent, he goes apeshit and goes on the prowl. But when looking through James's history, I found something that was actually quite interesting.
Is this where you reveal the grand thing to me?
Yes, actually. Yes. This is what drove me fucking crazy. According to the Twilight Wiki, there are only 2 people in existence who have ever escaped from James's tracking abilities. There are 2 of them. One of them is our darling Bella. Would you like to guess who the other one is?
Victoria?
Not quite.
Bella's kid? No, he was dead by that time. Carlisle?
No. Oh. Let me just fucking say it. Before that, it was our one and only, our beloved Alice Cullen.
Oh.
So here's where we're going to dive into Alice a little bit more, because this is what drove me crazy. So essentially, Alice was put into an asylum by her father after she accused her stepmother of killing her biological mother. So she was 19 when that happened. She goes into the asylum because the father claims that she's going crazy. But the reason that he's also saying that she's going crazy is because Alice had psychic abilities when she was a human. So that also leads into why she has those abilities now.
Oh, that opens so many doors.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, when she was in the asylum, her head was shaved during the threat of the typhoid outbreak, which is why she has short, spiky hair. And she also endured electroshock therapy, which rendered her with total amnesia. After that, a vampire who worked at the asylum befriended Alice and treated her like a daughter. So here's the strange thing. There was a vampire working at the asylum, but we're assuming here that he did not feed on humans because he was working within the asylum.
Was that Carlisle?
No. While she's still human, she has a vision that James is coming to get her. And so essentially when she tells her vampire friend, not knowing that he's a vampire, the vampire immediately bites her, took her away, and went to distract James, and then sacrificed himself in the process. Oh. So the reason that she escapes from James is because her blood had already turned, and then he decided to let her live a savage existence to see how she might turn out in the future. So again, when she woke up, the pain of the venom had erased all of her memories. You know, the only memories she had were of her premonitions. And so she saw her first vision of Jasper. So here's the thing. I want to know if James recognized Alice. I want to know if he recognized, oh my God, I wanted to track her at one point and she got away. I cannot accept the idea that she was one of the only ones. At that time, she's the only one that had gotten away from him. And if that is the case, what kind of opportunity was lost here to bring that aspect into this novel? If he had said, "It's good to see you again, Alice," not only are we seeing him, you know, in his dangerous mind and seeing that, okay, he tracked Alice of all people. That brings her a connection a little bit closer to Bella. But that also opens up a door to Alice's past, which she remembers nothing about. James dies at the end of the book. You know, at the end of the movie, end of the book, James dies. But imagine if he had given an indication that he knew who Alice was and what kind of dilemma that she would have been in when they caught up to him and they were about to kill him, because that was her only connection to her past so far. He knew her before she was a vampire and knew something about her life. That kind of connects her in with Edward and Bella, because on one hand, they have to destroy James because he's after Bella and she wants to protect Bella and Edward. But then on the other hand, he's literally the only connection that she has ever found about her past that she does not remember. In New Moon, she actually talks about going around and finding out where she came from, finding her own grave from when they put her in the asylum and her parents told everybody that she was dead. She was able to find out what her name was and where she lived, but imagine what that could have done and what kind of opportunity was missed out on.
Wow. I think working with what we have on the page, I can see why that maybe wasn't included. But, like, it's totally possible that Alice actually went on that emotional journey upon seeing James and upon, like, killing him later.
Because in the movie, she's the one that rips his head off.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about Chapter 18 here?
Yeah, Chapter 18 ends with them driving very fast. And it's all the kids in one car, which was also pretty funny. It's like teenagers in the 80s on a road trip.
Woo.
It made me think about how, yes, I said all this stuff about parents earlier in the episode, but also the teens are the stars of the show here, and they're like, this is a young adult novel. The young adults have to take the actual steps. But it was a little bit weird to me that Carlisle and Esme were so nonchalant about, like, oh yeah, you kids take the human who is being tracked. And on one hand, I think that shows how much the Cullens trust their kids. But on another hand, they're gonna plan the whole thing? Like, they have to do it all? Like, what? Anyway, it just made me think about all this media that we consumed when we were in elementary and middle school about kids who run away and are better off. Like, I have listed here The Boxcar Children, Ella Enchanted, which I still love, Anne of Green Gables, which we both love.
Aragon was one of them.
Aragon, yeah, he runs away from home. Totoro, so many different genres and mediums. And the common theme is that the children run away from home and take the initiative.
Can you imagine how much of a disaster that would have been if you would try to do that?
I mean, I think that would be most of us. Not me, because I'm capable with nature. I could survive an apocalypse, Nina. Don't take this away from me. I didn't say you couldn't.
Do you have a yikes moment for me?
Yeah, I have a yikes moment. I said it already. It was the time that Edward called people Bella's age children. Gives me the heebie-jeebies.
No, that's a good one. Well, my yikes moment is the fact that we just kind of brushed over the fact that Esme committed suicide. Hey, let's talk about that a little bit. I get the nonchalance thing, but it still kind of bugs me.
That's okay.
Thank you so much for listening to us, guys. This has been Chapter 10, Episode 10. Thanks so much for listening.
Yeah, as always, we're on SoundCloud and iTunes / Apple Podcasts. We're also on Twitter at Let's Unpack Pod, and you can find us both there. I've been tweeting a lot.
Yeah, you have been.
I've had a lot of thoughts.
That's all right. So have I, and it's great. It's fine. Anyway, again, follow us, tweet at us, talk to us, validate us. You know how the story goes. Rate, review, and subscribe if you want to. That would also be super cool. And as always, do it for the vamps, guys. Do it for the vamps. There we go.